So the question of the day, is President Trump being investigated by the special counsel? Now, you might be forgiven if you thought this was a settled matter, because there was a Washington Post story that said, yes, Robert Mueller is looking into some of the obstruction of justice allegations involving the president. And then a couple of days later, the President of the United States, on his own personal Twitter account, wrote the following: "I am being investigated for firing the FBI director by the man who told me to fire the FBI director. Witch hunt." Now, that was a reference to Rod Rosenstein, Deputy Attorney General, who hired Mueller as the special counsel, but who also had been asked by the president to do a memo on why or whether Jim Comey should be fired as head of the FBI, even though the president said he made up his mind before that. Okay, so this gets a little down in the weeds, but, you know, I am being investigated. But on Sunday, Jay Sekulow, member of the president's legal team, a conservative attorney who's kind of a fixture on cable news, did 4 of the 5 Sunday shows. And he was very combative with Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday, but also with Chuck Todd and Jake Tapper, pushing the notion that this is totally wrong, that President Trump is not under investigation by the special counsel. Basically, Sekulow saying that he hasn't been notified that there is any such investigation, which doesn't necessarily mean it's not happening. So the hosts were all pretty surprised, like, hey, wait a minute, didn't the president tweet? And Sekulow tried to argue that this was in response to that Washington Post story, which he said was, you know, based on 5 unconfirmed sources. And the president was sort of engaging on that level on social media, but it didn't mean he was really confirming that he was under investigation. Now, there's a level on which this just seems like a game of semantics, and it's more serious than a game, I get that. But I'm surprised that the White House sent the president's lawyer out to make this argument, because it just sort of goes around in a circle. What the Post story said, without getting too deep into the details, is that Mueller has set up interviews with 2 top intelligence officials who, it's been previously reported, and this hasn't been denied, had told associates that the president had called them and asked if they would consider intervening with Comey about the FBI investigation. Both of them declined. So it's on that basis that the Washington Post said, well, you know, Mueller is looking into these obstruction of justice allegations. Now, it's also true that nobody has notified the Trump legal team that there's an investigation, that he's not the subject of an investigation, that he's not the target of an investigation. So, I think a better way of putting it would be Mueller is looking at some of the president's conduct in a way that could lead to a full-fledged obstruction of justice investigation. Remember, this is all at a very preliminary stage, folks. And so it seems to me a better tack for the White House to be to say there's no cover-up, president didn't do anything wrong, there's nothing at the center of this, the allegations of collusion with Russia. After months and months, nobody's turned up any hard evidence of that. But instead, we got into this, you know, it all depends on what the meaning of the word investigation is. So it took us round and round. These were very combative interviews. It continued yesterday on some morning shows. Bottom line is, we probably can all wait and find out, you know, what Mueller and his prosecutors turn up, if anything. But to argue about the semantics of it seems to me to not get us very far. I think we ought to be fair and not breathless and not over the top in reporting on this investigation. But to deny there is investigation seems to me to be a little off the point.